If you're playing College Football 26 this week, or if you just love conference realignment scenarios, this is the video for you, because I've got the new and improved perfect Power 5 for College Football 26. Astute long-term viewers might say, haven't you already done a perfect Power 5 video? Yes, I did. They might also say, is that a new studio? And yes, it is. I was moving, so that's why it kind of took me a couple weeks to get a video out, but I got this brand new room, got it all set up, and now we're really going to be cranking out the videos for you. So I thought, to celebrate that and to celebrate the release of College Football 26, why don't we go back on my most popular video, the Perfect Power 5 Conference Realignment, and update it for a new age of college football video games and update it for a new view on how I think conferences should be set up. We're still going to go back to the Power 5. I was hoping to do a Power 6 for this one, but College Football 26 does not allow you to add additional conferences. So Big East fans, we're waiting until they add that to really do a proper video so you could experience it in real life. Or if they release this game on PC, then we can just get the mods for that. I digress. For the new and improved, we're going to be taking a much more balanced approach, both in terms of conference size, where we're looking at 13 or 14 team conferences, as well as not just packing all the best teams in the power conferences, which should make that promotion relegation system much more interesting on a year-to-year basis. But we'll get to that later on in the video. For now, without much further ado, let's get started with the power conferences, starting with the Pac-12. On your screen, you will see the version of the Pac-12 for our conference realignment scenario, and it's pretty chalk here. Compared to most of the conferences, we've got Oregon, BYU, USC, Washington, Oregon State, Utah, UCLA, Arizona State, Washington State, Colorado, Cal, Stanford, and Arizona. So we basically went with the Pac-12 plus BYU, which it's kind of the easiest one with not that many teams out west. Really, the only team you could really question here is Boise State over BYU, but BYU is a much more attractive team for a power conference. Obviously, Boise State is going to be in a quote-unquote power conference starting in 2026 with the Pac-12, but BYU offers so much more as far as fans, and they have that 84 national championship, so really, they are the right pick here. And like I said, we didn't want to pack all the best teams in the Power 5, and when you get past really Utah, BYU, Colorado, there's not much out west in terms of really powered teams, just because there's not as many schools. So I think this is a really good start, keeps us kind of all in the West Coast, and a lot of rivalries in this one, including adding the holy war between BYU and Utah, as well as the Civil War, Apple Cup, all the best rivalries out west. And if you've watched the previous video, or if you haven't, I'll link it at the end and as well as in the description. This whole thing is about bringing the regional side back to college football and bringing back those protected rivalries that we've lost over these last two cycles of conference realignment. And you could see that in the Pac-12 here. We're bringing back the Civil War, the Apple Cup, some of the ones that we've lost with the changes of a lot of teams going to the Big Ten, looking at you, Oregon, and Washington, even though I'm an Oregon fan. And you'll see that in the other conferences, that even if we made changes, we're keeping those old-time rivalries that made college football great. And what's kind of tearing at the soul of college football right now as they go through these conference realignments looking for big games instead of those games that really matter to the local teams. So let's keep it going here as we go east to the Big 12, and there's some big changes here. First, we got LSU, Oklahoma, Texas, Texas A&M, Missouri, Oklahoma State, Texas Tech, TCU, Arkansas, Nebraska, Kansas, Kansas State, and Baylor. A lot of talk in the last video's comment section was about bringing back the Big 8 specifically. So we made sure we had Arkansas in here, made sure we got Nebraska in here, and really bringing over LSU was kind of a no-brainer when you start to look at the regional side of things. Yes, they fit in the SEC, but really, if you go from Texas up to Missouri and down to Louisiana and kind of everything in between, that really makes sense that LSU would fit in here. When we go to promotion relegation, that the other Louisiana teams would be connected to the Big 12 as opposed to the SEC. And I think that you really have a one of the strongest conferences here when you start to look at this if you do play it in College Football 26, because LSU, Oklahoma, Texas A&M, that's a really strong top four. And then Missouri, Nebraska, Arkansas, you're probably looking at maybe TCU or Texas Tech if you're looking at this current year as the next level of teams. That's a really strong 1-2 lineup that you're got a few teams fighting for the college football playoff, as well as those classic rivalries being brought back, which is something that had really been lost in two straight conference realignment cycles in the Big 12. They've continued to take hits and reinvent themselves. I love the new Big 12, but this for old school Big 12 fans really should bring back some reminiscence. Obviously, TCU and Baylor being added or TCU specifically being added is the new side of things, but they've earned their keep in the Big 12 for sure. So next, let's head up north to what is probably the best college football conference currently in the Big 10. And let's talk about these changes that we've got here. We've got Ohio State, Michigan, Notre Dame, Wisconsin, Louisville, Michigan State, Purdue, Minnesota, West Virginia, Illinois, Northwestern, Indiana, Iowa, and Iowa State. So the Big Ten is one of the more difficult ones to deal with, and we start to see major changes when we get to the Big Ten, with obviously Louisville being in there, and Kentucky's one of the more difficult states because, yeah, it's culturally Southern, but it's really close to Ohio. Louisville especially, when you get to Northern Kentucky, you're really looking at South Ohio. So that's a more difficult one, and West Virginia, obviously, we brought that into the Big Ten. It was one of the first ones in real life that it was like, why would West Virginia be in the Big 12 when that first happened back in the 2010s? It makes more sense now with the Big 12 and it makes more sense that West Virginia's in the Big 12 than USC is in the Big 10, but obviously we're trying to make it a little bit more regionally put together. So we brought West Virginia up, and then Iowa, Notre Dame, if you're not going to make them independent, they have to go to the Big Ten. And then Iowa, you've got Iowa and Iowa State that have always kind of been separated. And we had to break Iowa State out of the Big 8, the Big 12, because I just don't like having states in different conferences if you don't have to. Kentucky is a really tough one, but I think that, we'd rather have Iowa State up in the Big Ten. And I think I've done that in every conference realignment that I've done. Make sure that Iowa State goes up to the Big Ten. So let's move further east and go with the ACC, and this will kind of explain some of the changes that we made to the Big Ten that I didn't mention. So we've got Clemson, Penn State, Duke, Syracuse, Wake Forest, Pitt, UNC, BC, NC State, Maryland, Virginia Tech, Virginia, and Rutgers. This is a direct result of us not being able to add conferences in college football 26, because a lot of these teams would be in the Big East. And I think if you look at this, it's probably the weakest conference we've had yet, because we removed the Florida teams like Florida State and Miami. But we do add Penn State, which I think kind of balances out as far as power-wise. And if you look at the promotion and relegation scenarios, if you keep those two teams and then you keep a couple other Florida teams, you could really quickly add up to a lot more Florida teams, a lot more North Carolina, South Carolina teams than anything in the Northeast, and the Northeast just starts getting pushed down. So we still wanted to keep that balance. Penn State is really the Northeastern team, so the Northeastern team that has any kind of power, I should say. So that's why we have this kind of scenario. I do think that when you're playing this in college football 26, this conference is going to be good. Syracuse was good a lot in college football 25. NC State was really good a lot. BC would have some good good seasons. So I think this conference is going to be better in college football 26 than it would be in real life. And also, this conference would kill in basketball just like the ACC does. Anyway, so it's an interesting one. It's not necessarily the most powerful one, but I think it makes sense when we get to the promotion relegation. And when you just start to play it out, this conference is going to end up being pretty powerful. All right, the last power conference, the SEC, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, Tennessee, Auburn, Georgia Tech, Miami, Vanderbilt, Mississippi State, Ole Miss, South Carolina, Florida State, and Kentucky. Okay, so on paper, this looks like probably the best, or maybe tied for the best with the Big 12. And, there's probably an argument to be made that South Carolina should be in the ACC, and you could bring Louisville down to from the Big 10 to the SEC and maybe move Pitt or leave Penn State in there. But I just think that, all these three conferences get put together. It's really hard when you talk about Kentucky, South Carolina, Pennsylvania, where they should be. And I think that if you could add Penn State and SEC and South Carolina to the ACC, that makes them the stronger conference. But I don't think it necessarily makes sense, especially with South Carolina being in the SEC for so long and having those rivalries that they've built. So this conference is still going to be very interesting when we start to talk about promotion relegation, because Kentucky, Vanderbilt, Georgia Tech, Auburn, they're all going to have some difficulty with these top-level teams, and we're going to make it a lot easier for teams to drop down and teams to move up than it was last time. So I think this conference could change really quickly because there is kind of a gulf now between the top-level teams and those bottom 4 or 5 teams in the conference. Okay, let's talk about the promotion relegation rules before we get to the G5 teams, and ideally this is supposed to create more movement than the last video just because it's more fun to play a video game with changes. So for promotion, there's two ways that a G5 team can be promoted for the lowest win-loss team in the given season to their power conference. First is winning any playoff game. If you win a playoff game and you're a G5 team, you will be moving up, and the lowest win-loss team will be moving down from the Power 5. Or if you get 2 straight conference championships, regardless of your playoff record or if you make the playoffs at all, you'll move up to the Power Conference, and the lowest win-loss team will move down. Now, for relegation, there's also 2 ways for a team to drop from Power 5 to G5. First is if you have 2 or less wins in one season. So if you have 1, 2, or 0 wins, you'll drop down for the conference champion in the G5 conference that you're connected to. Or if there's a conference champion that's already going to be moving up, or there's multiple teams being moved down, it'll be the conference champion and the runner-up, so on down the line. The second way is if you have 4 or less wins in 2 straight seasons. And now, if you have 3 or 4 wins in 2 straight seasons, you'll move down. The conference champion will move up, or runner-up, so on and so forth down the line. So there's a lot of ways for there to be movement up and down. Obviously, there's going to be more movement from teams being relegated just because there's more opportunities for that to happen. But either way, there's going to be a lot of movement, and hopefully there'll be at least some movement every single year in your dynasty. Okay, let's go through the G5 here. So first, we got Conference USA, which will go up to the Big 12. Some of the notable teams, obviously Houston, SMU, Tulane is somewhat notable as well. That is the only conference with 2 Power 5 teams, current Power 5 teams, that are in a G5 conference, or Power 4 teams, I should say. But it just made the most sense for Houston and SMU to move down. Even though SMU was a playoff team last season, I think that's one of the strongest conferences. But again, it's tough to move up. You have to win a playoff game, or you have to win the conference a couple years in a row. So they've got to hope for some of those lower teams to lose as well to really get the changes going. Mountain West obviously goes up to the Big 12, or the Pac-12. We got Boise State, like we talked about. The only team that kind of sticks out here is outside of the kind of Pac-12 footprint is UTEP. But it's really difficult when you get to the West to get to the 27, 28 teams that we needed in 2 conferences. All of these G5 conferences have 14 teams in them. So to get the 14th team, we needed to bring a Texas team over. But if you look at it, UTEP is basically at the same longitude as the Colorado schools, including Colorado State and Air Force, which are in the Mountain West. So it makes sense for them to go over. They're so far away from the rest of the Texas schools, besides maybe Texas Tech. Even that's like an 8-hour drive. Next, we got the American, which goes up to the ACC. This is kind of what we talked about with that Northeast problem. You have Navy, Army, Buffalo, UMass, Connecticut, Temple, all these teams up in the Northeast that didn't really have a home, kind of scattered across the country. So we've got those teams tied up with, obviously Delaware being moved up into the FBS. Them and Missouri State are making their debuts in the FBS in 2025-26 and their debuts in college football 26. So we've got them tied with North Carolina and Virginia schools to make up the American. The Sun Belt, which might be one of the weakest, American and Sun Belt, probably the 2 weakest conferences for G5. We've got the Florida schools. We talked about how they had to move over to the SEC. That ties up with UCF, USF, FIU, Mr. Worldwide International University, and Memphis. So again, we talked about the schools that are at the lower end of the SEC are going to be having a tough time sticking around. So you could see some movement from the Sun Belt, especially from those higher end schools that we talked about. And then the last one is the MAC, obviously going up to the Big Ten. There were some changes here. We had to add Marshall to tie with West Virginia, also one of those states that kind of is in no man's land, along with Kentucky. We added Western Kentucky to tie with Louisville. And then Cincinnati was the Power Conference school that moved to the MAC. So quite a few schools from the Big 12 in Houston, Cincinnati, and UCF get moved down to G5 schools for this particular realignment. Cincinnati could make an argument to go into the Big Ten, but you're taking out Purdue or somebody like that. And Purdue has a long-standing relationship with the Big Ten and a lot of rivalries there. So if they lose, they will drop down and Cincinnati will move up, or whoever will move up. But Cincinnati had to start as they're kind of a new Power Conference team anyway. So just to wrap things up, like I said, this is more along the lines of something for college football 26, but I think when you do these conference realignment scenarios, it's to talk about what we're losing in college football currently. With all these mega conferences, we're seeing even more movement to just a two-party system, essentially, which is very American. With the Big Ten and the SEC, we see this new playoff scenario that we're talking about with the 5 conference winners plus 11 wildcard spots. It's just going to add more power to the 2 biggest conferences and continue to chip away at the regional rivalries that have made college football so great. I think that, 12, 13, 14 team conferences is really the max. I think a 10 team conference is really perfect. And I hope that at some point we'll get back to that. I do think that there will at some point be some changes that are going to bring back the regional side of things, because people are just not liking this new version of college football. The Pac-12 is now the Pac-8, which we'll talk about in a future video about what their standing is in the country now and kind of what the future is of the Pac-12. I think that is where you look for hope, that those 2 teams, Oregon State and Washington State, have been able to pull a conference together. There's some hope that there's some coalition out there that's going to be pulled together, and I think that Pac-12 schools that had to go find a home might be looking to go back to the Pac-12 and really start to reverse the poison that has been put into fucking college football over these last 10, 15 years. But let me know what you think about this particular conference lineup. I hope that you have a chance to put it into College Football 26. The pre-release was out the day that I'm recording this, but this video will be out on Tuesday. So if you don't have the pre-release, the game, I think you're going to get it on Thursday. And, just put this in there. Let me know what you think. Let me know any changes that you would make. And, yeah. But thanks for watching that video. Make sure that you like and subscribe. And if you've made it this far, leave a comment below. Let me know what you think. If there should be any changes to this, definitely let me know about that. Or if there's anything I'm not thinking about as far as promotion, relegation, or things that you can do in College Football 26 Dynasty that could make this more interesting. I know there's a lot of things that are missing from College Football 26 Dynasty, so let me know what you think that they should add for the next season or any patches this season as well. Other than that, if you want to watch more of my videos, I do have those for you. I mentioned my other version of this video, the Perfect Power 5 Conference Realignment. That's right here. You can go ahead and check that one out. Up here, I've got actually a cool one about March Madness in college football, which was also done in College Football 25. So check that one out there, and we'll probably recreate that for the next season. Other than that, I've got my subscribe link on this side, and we will catch you next time. See ya!